Well, friends, part two. Here I am back from the rock concert, which ended suddenly, and I apologize for that. I became so enmeshed in the experience, I lost track of the computer time. And the computer said, "That's enough, you're done." Ending with Janis Joplin, dear old Janis. And did we take another little piece of her heart? I hope not. It's now well past dawn. There's a little more light in the room. And another coolish morning here in southern Ontario. And a couple of those since it rained. Not quite into the summer heat yet. Although I know other places certainly are. Certainly the internet is abuzz with chatter about the various whistleblowers and revelations from Stephen Greer's weekend webinar, and all the people talking about their knowledge of downed spacecraft, of back-engineered human spacecraft, and the criminal activity behind this secret space program of this multinational elite that has been keeping all these things secret for 50, 60 years, hugging them to themselves for their own benefit. That repeated earthbound habit of clutching all the goodies to your own self and hanging on to them because you fear scarcity. The elite is still at it. They've been at it forever. And they're clutching all their possessions and knowledge and wealth and power to themselves. And finally, the elements of the legitimately elected government is taking it seriously and pursuing them. How will these new technologies affect us? How will they modernize our rapidly, seemingly rapidly depleting ecosystem? It's very idealistic, all this moving away from fossil fuels in a year or two and having these zero-point energy devices powering everything under the sun. Anti-gravity cars, flying machines. I mean, they'll all be developed, but I suspect not as quickly as the idealists would like. It takes time to retool. Let's put it that way. But it's an interesting time period, and much toing and froing in the mental plane of thoughts and ideas and excitement. You plug into the mental plane, as is evidenced to some degree by the internet, where endless opinions, discussions, debates are ongoing. And definitely been an increase in the last few days. And we'll see how that stimulates the general activity of souls like us who are interested in exploring, who cannot resist exploring, who cannot stay inside the bubble of the societally mandated consciousness, who cannot stay within the boundaries of what is approved and praised, who constantly feel this urge to get out there and mess it up with the unknown. That is our purpose, and that is what we do. The vanguard of exploration, the cutting edge of newness. We were on an ETE spaceship the other day, and that was yet another experience of consciousness and form, an unusual form, and I'm feeling the urge, the pressure to go to a praying mantis being. They do keep coming up in abductees' experiences and contactee experiences. And I had an experience with a client a few weeks ago, where they found themselves bonding with a mantis being who said, "I've been waiting for you to come for the longest while, and I'm very grateful that you're here." And the one I'm in contact with now, or at least envisioning, and I assume the envisioning is contact, is, looks like a large praying mantis, is exactly what it looks like. And very gentle. What is that? I'm thinking of that T.S. Eliot line, infinitely gentle, infinitely suffering thing. Although I'm pretty sure he wasn't referring to mantis beings. But they do seem to have absorbed their suffering. They're not like, their form is not liked, their form is feared. And they are inside that rather strange, threatening form, very gentle, loving beings. And they care for our hearts and our evolutionary path and wish to help us on our way, to put it mildly. And part of our way is to overcome our fear and suspicion of alien life forms, or life forms that are alien to us. We are accustomed to insects being on the ground under our feet in the forest. To have them, embrace us intimately is a shock. And they recognize that. And they recognize the fact that we need to be educated in these matters. We need to see other life forms have an evolutionary potential and accomplishment, not just us. So the mantis being is here, and he is extending his greetings to you all, and hopes that others of you will have the courage to embrace the consciousness of a praying mantis, a large insect that will not bite your head off, he promises. I am now embracing him, at least energetically, not putting my arms around him, but my aura. He tells me my aura feels to him like the aura of a child. Eager, enthusiastic, loving. That's interesting. I find that interesting. I don't feel like a child most of the time. I feel like an old man. An old man in spirit and in age. But to be seen and perceived as a child is very interesting. He says, "You are eager to learn, and I am pleased to see that." I'm asking about the difficulty of, or my perception of the difficulty of moving around in that form. And he tells me it's not difficult at all. It comes naturally to them, and they've been at it for thousands of years. So a certain little sort of piquant humor there. I guess all our archetypal forms of animals, insects, and mammals and whatnot are well used and well practiced by those inside of them. It's the same, he says, it's the same challenge. Your spirit enters a form and adapts. It adapts to the potentials of that form. And by adapting, and pushing the envelope on adaptation, to use your human phrase, we slowly extend the abilities of that form. It's only by getting inside that you get to drive the vehicle and get to understand how directing the vehicle is a learning curve. We weren't always this good. So we encounter each other energetically. It's interesting. I ask if he wants me to go somewhere with him, and he says, well, we can do that another time. We don't have to do it on this occasion. He suspects that just encountering each other consciously is a big first step. And I say that I see that, I understand. Just being in the same space with you and feeling your, what to me is an unusual presence, is quite remarkable in itself. I feel the urge to dance around him, and he remains static as I do so. I dance, I seriously, I'm dancing around him to a music that I'm hearing that he maybe has not. And it's a little silly, but he gets the energy, he gets the spontaneous eruption of rhythmic movement. We have watched you humans dancing, and we are, as you say, tickled by the experience. It's not something we have a habit of falling into, but it's amusing and educative to see you do it. And our understanding of spontaneous movement is increased. It's not something that comes to us naturally, but it does seem to come to humans. And I tell them what I think it is. It's the energy of the emotional body expressing itself in the physical form. The emotional body is always flexing and bending and moving itself, as that is the nature of emotions and moods. It's never rigid, it's never still, it's always moving. And so I continue to dance around this praying mantis being, as though I were listening to a favorite record and dancing around my own room. I hope you can image this as you follow my talk here, because it really is quite amusing. I mention, telepathically if you like, I mention the impact of these more public declarations and discussions and debates about the presence of ETEs on the planet and the movement of spaceships around the body of Gaia, and the whole notion of visitors exploring. And he tells me they're very pleased that this is occurring. It's long overdue that it enters our public consciousness. And they feel it will help us mature and into, the galactic brotherhood, as it has been called. He says you need to stop pretending you're on your own. You need to step out and embrace not just the sentience of your decaying ecosystem, but the sentience of all other ecosystems on other planets, the very principle of an ecosystem, whether it is in ascendancy or decline. You have to see that you're part of a bigger whole, a very active part, a very important part. Humans hold a key that no one else holds, he's telling me. You are the incomprehending savage as well as the all-knowing God. You embrace both polarities, and that is the key to your ascension, understanding that you are both and everything in between. And I ask about their consciousness. He tells me it's very advanced. They have completely disposed of the primitive consciousness. That is all gone for them, whereas it is still present for us, and we can touch on it anytime we care to watch the news of any war anywhere. It is how we understand ourselves, or should understand ourselves, perhaps. And why have they ditched this primitive consciousness, I'm asking? Because it suits us to do so. We want to present the higher form of consciousness, the very high form of consciousness, the complete freedom of movement, access, and knowingness. Not just to our own species, but to others. We can escape this ungainly, awkward-looking form, but we choose to stay in it to prove a point that the God consciousness can be contained within this seemingly inappropriate form. I tell him I understand, and I thank him for the gift of that communication. And I promise to keep up our relationship. And I acknowledge his farewell. Well, isn't that interesting? I find myself now hovering somewhere in the psychic space, the astral space, above some area in Ukraine which they are currently fighting over. Well, there's quite a lot of it, but I'm not sure exactly where. I'm seeing that flooded area after the dam was blown up. It looks just like a flooded area, unfortunately. And not much activity, but the presence of conflicting energies and anger and aggression and fear are all present. I was going to say present and accounted for. And these souls are exploring their tormented tribalism, as far as I can tell. The Ukraine-Russian polarity is expressing its historical enmities once again. It's ongoing. Those who cannot give up the struggle continue on with it, as with all tribal warfares. And I can't claim to be knowledgeable in any great degree of that history, but it's undoubtedly there. And I have read about small segments of it. And where one large country oppresses a smaller country and assumes its right of control, the smaller country will always rebel against it. Always. They will find very ingenious ways to rebel. They will integrate, but never give up their identity. They will fight openly. They will resist culturally. They will pretend to embrace to gain temporary advantage. And onward it goes. There is a resolution to all conflicts. Sometimes it is just merely running out of energy for that conflict. Peace will be declared, diplomacy will be resumed, and economic cooperation will reignite. When that will happen is, always hard to say. I never would like to predict these things. But it's foolish to predict. It'll happen, just when. And, conflicts begin, conflicts end. They rise and fall, like the tides of history, like the seasons of nature. There is a constant rise and fall, and we are experiencing some aspect of that in the Ukraine right now. Will they fight to a draw? Will they fight to a negotiated peace? I suspect so. As many others do too. We all have thoughts on it. So I'm still hovering here, feeling the various energies. Spirits come and go. The dead drift by. Some seeming to feel my energy, but not knowing quite what it is, because I'm not really manifesting a form. I'm not looking like Gordon. And should I be here to help, or should I be here to observe? Well, I've certainly been here to help before, and translate some of the souls, or help translate some of the souls away from their attachment to the conflict, their anger, their fear, their resentment, their jealousy, and bring them to the astral world where they can resettle themselves. I've been part of that process. It's ongoing in all war zones, and you can join in anytime you feel like it. They can always use the help. It's busy. It's interesting to me, the whole busyness of souls departing in a war zone. I'd like to see it, I don't think anyone's compared the stats, but you probably could. The stats of the rate of death in a war zone like Ukraine compared to the rate of death in a large city, any of the large cities on the planet. Whether you're talking Beijing or Manila or, whatever. Because the death rate there's got to be pretty high. And those comparisons aren't often made in the media because they wish to accentuate the drama and the tragedy and the suffering. Because, as they say, fear sells. But it's a matter of some interest to me. And maybe I'll explore that at some point. But it's I don't know if you've ever discovered the WHO figures for the number of suicides per year, but it's shockingly high. Hundreds of thousands every year commit suicide. And it's actually ahead of the numbers that die in wars, way ahead. You can track that down on the internet, just like you can track anything down. But on one level, it's a shock, and on another level, it really doesn't matter, because the transition back and forth between the astral and the physical is continuous to the point of continuous in the now and continuous throughout history. And it's not nearly as important as we like to make it out to be. It's about as important as a major airport or train station and any major hub of transportation. There's constant coming and going. And it is part of the life we live, this constant coming and going. And I ask you to embrace it, not as tragedy, not as suffering, but as a predictable, inevitable series of transitions, of movements. Events in time, if you like. Being born, growing up, and dying. It never stops. There are rest breaks, of course. On the astral plane is one long rest break, really. And thank God for that, eh? So embracing that is important on the inner journey, as far as I'm concerned. And I would like you to take it that way. It's part of our evolutionary destiny to embrace all that coming and going and understand its place in the overall scheme of things. And for me, it's not nearly as important as we like to make out. It's not. It's endless coming and going. And like the breath moving in and out of the lungs, like the heart pumping blood, like the brain processing thought. It never stops. There is no beginning, no end, no alpha and omega. We like to think that there would be one, because it gives us a nice sense of completion and drama. But unfortunately, there is not really any completion and a lot less drama than we would like to pretend. Although I enjoy watching dramatic movies as much as anybody. But it's a way of entertaining ourselves as we move along the inner journey to completion, as I have said before. And we'll move toward the end of this particular experience in meditation. And may you enjoy all your spontaneous projections until I see you next time. May God bless you with a series of joyful surprises. So long.